What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to talk about Katie, who also goes under the name Voice Unmuted on Twitch. I had the absolute pleasure of producing and mixing her 5-song EP, which is now out into the world. So I thought I would give you a quick breakdown of one of the 5 songs. Today specifically, we're going to focus on arrangement, because as a song came to me, this particular one, there was pretty much just acoustic guitar and vocals and a couple other elements. And it wasn't Katie's favorite song off the EP. I think she just kind of not abandoned it, but it just didn't quite match her vision. But this is a song that she actually loved the production on the most. So I feel like I kind of really hit this one out of the park in terms of arrangement. So that's going to be our focus today. So this is a whole project. Not, again, a massive number of tracks. If you follow this channel, you know that I don't focus on huge, massive track counts. It's all about how many tracks do you need to get your message across, and then focus on building the arrangement around the vocals, because this is a vocal-driven song. So I'm going to play you a little bit of the original mix, the reference mix that she sent me, and this is what I had to work with. So let's start with that.
So the tears keep falling down my face, yeah, and on my lips I can't forget the way they taste.
Okay, just to give you a little sense of the song. So the original reference mix was pretty static. It was pretty much what you heard was the chorus throughout the course of the entire song. So she wanted, some kind of bigger arrangement. So there's nothing inherently wrong with this original mix, other than I noticed that the vocals were not cutting through. So I knew that I was going to have to do some work, get some vocals cutting through. And I really struggled with coming up with an arrangement on this one. For like a week, I felt like I got nowhere. And Katie was messaging me. She's like, this is the last song that we did. This is track number 5. She's like, how's song number 5 going? I'm like, oh yeah, it's going really well. But I was struggling. Sometimes starting from scratch is a blessing, but it's also a curse, because you're like, where do you go? If you're just mixing a track and you have a reference mix, you already have something to work towards. You know what the end result is supposed to sound like, or at least that's close to the artist's original vision. In this case, we pretty much just have the vocals and some guitar. So first thing I do is just basically strip everything away. And I bring in some vocals. I leave the reference track in there just so I can kind of sync everything to the track. I found if you're Logic users, I found instead of bringing all of the vocal takes into my session, I just keep them over here, and I audition them kind of one at a time, go through them, and I just bring over the ones that I want. Otherwise, if you have a lot of takes, your project can quickly become very overwhelming. So I found that this is the best process for me. So I literally just audition the tracks, bring them over. If I hear a really good take, I'll bring it over. Worst comes to worst, you send the mix to the client, and they're like, let's switch out a vocal here or a vocal there, and that's all part of the process anyway. So I find this is a time saver doing it this way. So we get the vocals in there, and then literally I just started with one. I think I started with like the kick drum. All right, literally just a kick drum. So let's just it's literally a kick drum. Here we go. Amazing, right? It's literally a kick drum. And then we brought some snare in there. So let's play them both together. It's literally just a side stick, and that was my starting point. So I had the vocals and the kick drum and the snare, but already it's like, okay, sometimes you just have to start small and go from there. What did we use for these, by the way? I think we straight up used studio drummer from library is so old from Native Instruments, but still gets the job done. Sometimes I use Stephen Slate SSD5, which is a really good library as well. I don't know, for whatever reason, I use studio drums. There's very, very little percussion going on here. So, and then we have some toms later on, and ride cymbal, and some crash. And that's mostly it. So as you can see, the individual rhythm tracks are kind of broken down through tracks 2 to 7. And they're recorded individually so that I can EQ them separately and process them separately. That's it. As you can see, there's no compression of any kind. There's just straight up EQ. I don't use a ton of compression. I don't love compression. I use it for vocals and sometimes some other things, but mostly just on vocals. I like dynamic range. Compression is not something I'm a huge fan of. Everything is overly compressed nowadays. I like natural sounding stuff, although I use a lot of kind of messed up samples. But anyway, for the most part, I like it natural. So that's kind of like the drums. That's my drum treatment, and sometimes I record them, I play them together as like a full kit, and then I break down the parts individually. I might have done that here, I'm not really sure, and then I break them down. But it's important to break them down into the individual components so that you can adjust all the EQ as necessary and bust it out to some reverb. Okay, so bus 1, we got reverb. Valhalla Room reverb, low cut on the EQ. So those are our buses. We got reverb, it's like kind of a long verb for instruments. We got plate verb for the vocals, and we got stereo delay, and we have some tape saturation, which I sometimes use for vocals to help just cut through the mix. Okay, so not a whole lot of processing, as you can see. Very, very little going on. It's mostly just EQ adjustments, and not additive EQ, but subtractive EQ, which is, to me, the most important thing. Some Spitfire Solstice, which I've been using a ton of. When I first got this library, I didn't use it a whole lot, and I was like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have bought this one. I've been using it for so many things lately. It's so useful for kind of getting different sounds. So this is one of their kind of drum kits. I think it's called the Marauder kits. Let's listen to what that sounds like. Probably so low in the mix that you might not even know that it's there, but it's just enough to add a little bit, because as you can see, we're building the arrangement. You can tell even by looking at the arrangement, right? It's pretty spacious. And then we add something here, and we add something here. You know, the snare kind of comes in, the ride comes in later. These tracks start to come in, then we get some guitar, build. The arrangements should always be evolving for the most part. Sometimes you just want like a straight up kind of acoustic track, you know, piano and vocals, and you want very, very little going on. I like to just build. I like to kind of start small and big, depending on the song. So that's what we have going on there. So that takes care of pretty much all of our percussion. Bass, just a straight up bass sound. I think we used Scarby bass. Okay, we're pretty much, this is pretty heavy on the samples, this particular song. For a lot of the other songs, I replaced the guitar with a real, there was acoustic guitar, but sometimes I re-record it using my acoustic. I use my electric a little bit. So there is a real electric guitar later on through that. Most of these are sample-based, more so on this song than some of the other ones. And there's no particular reason for that. It's just the way that it turned out. So we got our bass, we got our piano, which is, of course, if you've been watching this channel, you know that it's going to be noir piano. Just a basic felt sound. Let's listen to that. So even part of the arrangement when you're building it, it's also in the parts that you're creating. If you're, whether you're a mix engineer or a producer, or maybe you're just a session musician that's been hired to add a part, if you want to build a track, you're going to start off simple. So as you can see, those are just straight up chords. And then it gets a little bit more involved as we go further into the track. Very, very important if you want to get momentum behind a track. Then we get some Neo. We always have some Spitfire Audio Neo in there. This is, this is the harmonium. Somebody asked me on my YouTube channel when I had done a review of Spitfire Audio Neo, Albion Neo, and they asked me specifically about the harmonium, which I haven't used very much. So I'm always trying to dig up through samples. Sometimes, you get like a terabyte of samples and there's stuff that you forget about. And I threw some harmonium in there just because. Why? Just because. Let's listen to it. It has a really warm, intimate sound. Again, very little processing going on there. I had to actually gain it up. It's a very, very quiet sample. Threw some pretty heavy reverb on there, roll off some low. But it just adds some warmth to the track. I mean, when I listen to that sample, it sounds like I'm literally right there in the room. Then we have some Bode electric guitar from Omnisphere. You know that there's going to be some Omnisphere in here. Actually, this is the only Omnisphere track. Usually I'm pretty heavy on Omnisphere these days, but this is the only one. This is kind of like, I don't want to say my signature sound because I didn't make it, but the Bode electric guitar, anyone who follows me on Twitch know that I use this all the time. Love it. Let's listen to it. It has such a delicate sound. It's useful in so many situations. It's basically like from my ear anyway, it's a processed lap steel sound. And anytime I ever play it, everybody's like, what is that sound? It's just one of those go-to sounds. Now for the acoustic guitar, I actually did something different. I wasn't in love with the acoustic tracks that were part of the original project. So I could either recreate them on my acoustic. I decided to try something different. So with the help of a little, some fancy libraries here, a whole lot of Native Instruments tracks in this song. So we got the session guitars strummed acoustic. We're going sample based here. So let's listen to what we got going on here. Literally just to create some rhythm in the background. These libraries, if you use them sparingly, they're incredibly useful. They have a really good stereo image to them, just for getting some rhythm in there. Very, very useful. So I got a couple of those tracks. We got some more Neo. This is, what is this? God knows. Let's check it out. Humble Requiem. I can play these too. Oh yeah, it's just like gorgeous. I tend to be more a user of hybrid sounds versus straight up acoustic sounds. So if I buy a string library, I don't necessarily want the original strings. I want the processed strings. That's what I want. I like processed sounds, which completely contradicts everything I said at the beginning of the video where I was looking for natural sounding things. This does sound like, it does definitely sounds like strings, but there's some processing going on. Let's listen to a little bit of it. I find that the process part of the libraries tend to be a little bit easier to work with songs where there's vocals. It's not always the case, but usually that's what I find. So there's 3 instances of that same sound. Then we got some electric guitar, which is straight up guitar rig. What am I in right now? I think it's guitar rig 6. I have not upgraded to, yeah, this is guitar rig 6. One of my favorite sounds, creamy snowflakes, use it all the time. Why have I not upgraded to a guitar rig 7? Because I'm waiting for the 50% off sale, which we know that Native Instruments always runs. Wait for that sale, and then I'm going to upgrade. because I love guitar rig and I use it all the time. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit. This is a very, very faint background. It's almost not even there. Just a little bit of finger picking on the electric guitar. So very, very subtle. Sometimes I use a real guitar. Sometimes I use sample guitar, whatever. It doesn't matter what you use. Use anything and everything at your disposal. If you have real guitars, use them. If you have real instruments, use them. If you want a slightly different sound, use samples. It doesn't matter. Use whatever it is that you have available to you. If you have a larger budget, you can shop your parts out to your favorite guitar players. I know a gazillion guitar players, and there's nothing I would love better than to employ them on these projects. Typically, especially with newer artists, we don't have extensive budgets to work with. So that's where you can turn to more sample-based stuff. Basically, I try to play everything that I can on my own. Stuff that I can't play, or if I'm looking for a different sound, then I'm going to run through the samples. So this is just to give you an idea of what you can do with guitar rig. I loaded up the sampler in Logic. This is just a straight up sampler in Logic. Clean electric guitar. And then I EQ'd it, roll off the low, but then I ran it through guitar rig. This is a neat little workaround that you can use to still start with a MIDI guitar sound that I can play on my MIDI keyboard because I'm a piano player primarily, but then I can still run it through guitar rig and still get that guitar rig sound. So that's where guitar rig is so fantastic for processing. You can run anything through there. Vocals sound really good. Drums sound really good. I've used it on acoustic violins. Native Instruments, I don't know what you're doing, but guitar rig sounds fantastic. I'm 100% behind their libraries. Guitar players will probably argue with me, and that's fine. I'm looking at it from a production point of view, and I love it. I'll take off the guitar rig, and then I just hear this is just a straight up Logic sound. Wow. Sounds horrible, right? It's like, why would you put that? But let's run through a guitar rig. Very, very simple processing idea, but it works really, really well. And then we have a couple more guitar libraries. These are all heavy on the samples on this one. Electric Sunburst, session guitars, also from Native Instruments. So why does Native Instruments not sponsor me? I don't know. Let's listen to this. It's just really good. Again, if you want rhythmic parts, it just locks into the tempo just perfectly. Sometimes you have to tweak the end of it. Sometimes the sample doesn't quite end where it's supposed to. So you might have to drag the regions out a little bit. Incredibly useful library. And then we have Strawberry Electric Guitar, which I've been using just for years. Evolution Strawberry Electric Guitar. Fantastic sound. Okay, slightly panned a little bit to the left. Let's listen to that track. It's got that kind of like Edge U2 kind of sound, and I'm a huge U2 fan, so I think that's where that came from. And that's pretty much it. And we build the arrangement, add more parts. This is a little trick for arrangements too. If you're listening to the song and you get to a part where you're like, this is starting to sound boring, or this is starting to sound repetitive, or there's a little empty space in here, add a new element. And just continuously add new elements. Or if it's starting to sound really busy, take some things away. But you want there to be an evolution of the track. The last thing you want is for your viewers to be listening to it. You know, like that music that you listen to at the beginning of movies and movie theaters, which, mark my words, is going to be taken over by AI. But it's like these 4-bar loops, it's library music, but it's really not very good library music. It's just like the same 4 bars over and over again. Then they add the drum. The drum kit comes in on bar 5, and then it's all just so cyclical and boring. That's going to be gone. That music can easily be taken over by AI. Anyway, that's just my personal belief. And then we have the vocals, where you're going to spend the vast majority of your time. So we have, let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vocal tracks. We have EQ'd, rolled off some low, there's a little notch, and there's a high shelf. It's an extremely typical EQ for vocals. Pretty much you're always going to roll off the lows. You bring it over until it sounds thin, and then you bring it back. And then you add a little bit of a shelf. Sometimes I use presets, and sometimes I mess around with them. But that's pretty much always going to be, you want a good vocal. 99% of them are probably going to look close to this. And maybe they won't have this notch here, but you're going to get that shelf, which adds a little bit of air. And don't be afraid to use presets. Just mess around with them. You'd be surprised what you might come up with. Stacked compressors. So you compress things, add one compressor, get it right where you want it, get it nice and tight, and then take that same compressor, stack another one on top of it, and then you have a very, very even sounding vocal. Get the de-esser, and then a little bit of pitch correction. Now, Logic has updated their pitch corrector. I hate reading about things or manuals or anything, so I literally just mess around with it. I just turn this, I turn that, and mess around with it. Mostly what you're going to have to do is fool around with the response time, so it's going to sound very, very natural. You can put in the root, whether it's a natural major scale, natural minor. But there's very, very little pitch correction in there, but just a little bit. And then the 2 buses, we have bus 2 going to the plate reverb, and bus 3 is going to the stereo delay. As you can see, very, very little reverb added to these vocals. I tend to use delay a lot more than reverb, far more effective, far cleaner in your mix. And then on 3 of these tracks, we added an exciter, a little bit of saturation. This one's sizzle, just to help it push through the mix and get it just cutting right through. Just a tiny little bit on these 3 parts here. So what I can do is I can play one of the vocals, and I'll just add the effects one at a time so that you can hear the before and after. So let's take everything away. Sorry, Katie, I know you're watching this, and there's nothing worse than listening to your own dry vocals. My apologies. But here we go. We'll add them one at a time.
A war against myself, so the tears keep falling down my face. Yeah, and on my lips I can't forget the way they taste. Oh, 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 oh.
So pretty night and day, right? And again, you're going to spend most of your time on the vocals, but this is what the song is all about. If you have vocal pop songs, if you don't get this right, it doesn't matter what else you do. Nobody's going to listen to it. Some people have been asking me about the VSX headphones by Slate. So I track everything first with these headphones because they're just way more comfortable. And then when I'm happy with everything, I switch to my VSX. I mix everything down. That's when I add all the EQ and everything, fine tuning. And then I throw on the Lander mastering. I'm exclusively using Lander mastering right now. I love what they've done with it. And that's my process. So I keep those 2 things separately. Tracking and mixing, I really try to keep them separately. And that's pretty much it. Let's listen to a little bit of the original arrangement, and then we will listen to a little bit of mine.
Do I stay blankly from my bed, or let the waves come crashing down when I can't catch my breath? Oh,
arrangement is key. So I think especially with this song, I'm extremely happy with how it turned out, because we kind of just didn't really have much of arrangement to begin with. So I kind of had fun building it up into something different. It still might not be Katie's favorite song, but it was the one that she thought the production was the best on, and I really appreciated that. So special thanks to Katie for trusting me with her tunes. This is work that anybody can do. Okay, if you have really good working knowledge of your whatever DAW it is they're using, if you have a good set of ears, and you're not afraid to go out and try different things, and I can't emphasize this enough, you're good with people. All the time, if it's between somebody who's amazing but difficult to work with and somebody that's pretty good but easier to work with, the person that's easier to work with will always get the job. So just keep that in mind. There's some exciting collabs coming up. One with Lisa Cuthbert, who's just absolutely brilliant. Weathering Grains and Luna Keller, which I've been meaning to finish for a long time. And for the very first time, and some very, very exciting news, I was given the opportunity to produce a song for a virtual reality video game, which I am so stoked about. It's, again, a collaborative project, somebody who found me through Twitch. I'm incredibly excited with how it's turning out. As soon as I'm able to talk more about it and share the track, I will. And we've recently passed 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thanks to everybody for watching, for listening, for tuning in, for subscribing, for liking, for sharing my content. I feel like this is turning into a very, very exciting year. So go forth, create, produce, mix, put your music out into the world, and don't worry about how many plays you get. Stay true to your vision, and good things will come to you.